Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. Today I'll be doing a little bit of everything. First off, I'll be doing a book haul, then I'll be going through some book reviews, then I'll go through my currently reading, and finally give you guys an update on my writing. So if you're interested in any one of those in particular, check out the chapters and skip ahead to it if you want. Otherwise, let's get into it. Beginning with the book haul is Arthur Miller, Death of a Salesman. So this is on the top 1000 list by James Moostich, 1000 books to read before you die. I have a signed book by Arthur Miller, Time Bends. I most know him as the author of The Crucible, which is a play that my class read in high school. I would say that I read in high school, but I don't really know if I read it. It is a play, which is concerning because I'm not really too much into plays, but since it's a top 1000 book, I'll give it a chance. And fortunately, it's very short, so even I should be able to bear through with it. Next, I thought it might be on the top 1000 list, but it's actually not, and I don't think anything by this author is on the top 1000 list. But I saw this book at the bookstore, and I thought, just guessing by the title, that it would be a top 1000 book, wrongly. The main reason I knew of the title was because I think AC/DC named an album after this, and the book is W. Somerset Maugham, The Razor's Edge. So I didn't know anything about this book, and so when I found out it wasn't a top 1000 book, I looked it up on Wikipedia, and something I saw was that, I don't know who, but like some critics were saying like this was definitely a masterpiece book. So even though it's not a top 1000 book, apparently it is a well-liked book or a highly regarded book. So I'll still give it a chance. So The Razor's Edge. Don't know anything about it otherwise. Next, I've been talking about him a lot more recently on my channel, but it's Graham Greene, Orient Express. So at this point, I'm a Graham Greene completionist. I'd like to read every book by him. So I don't know which book this falls under, like in his chronological order for his publishing. So I don't know. Based on whichever earliest book I have from him will probably be the next book I read by him. But anyway, I saw this at the bookstore, Orient Express, and I didn't have it, so I got it. Next on the book haul is H.G. Wells, The Island of Dr. Moreau. So I thought H.G. Wells, I've never read anything by him before. I thought he might be on the top 1000 list for either this book or War of the Worlds. Neither is a top 1000 book. The one on the top 1000 list, I think, is The Invisible Man. But anyway, I've seen the trailer for this movie. I think the movie version with, I think it is Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando. I think it was a real flop of a movie, but anyway, since I haven't seen that movie, I'm not corrupted by it, and I've never read anything by H.G. Wells before, so I'll be able to read it like without any expectations really, and again, fortunately, it's a real short book, so I'm eager to give it a read. Next on the book haul is off the top 1000 list. It is Selected Stories by Alice Munro. So I don't know anything about this author. The owner of the bookstore kind of said her writing is pretty good, but he doesn't really like her subject of writing at all. So I don't know, that kind of lowers my expectations a bit, which is probably actually a good thing, because if I had real high expectations, it'd be difficult to meet that. Generally, I have found if I have like low or no expectations for a book, I have a greater chance of really being impressed by it. So I don't know, that probably won't be the case with this one. I probably won't like it either, especially me. But at least I'm not like real high expectations for it, so I'll give it a chance and we'll see how it goes. Next, I don't know anything about it or the author. It is off the top 1000 list, but it is Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves. Again, I don't know anything about it whatsoever, but somewhere here it says an autobiography, and I am notoriously not a fan of autobiographies or memoirs or anything, so I don't know. I'll still give it a chance though, because it's a top 1000 book, but low expectations. Not just low expectations, but also a short leash. So if I see things early on that I just do not like in the writing or whatever, I'll probably just quickly DNF it, but giving it a chance at some point. Another book I didn't know anything about, and it's off the top 1000 list, but this one the bookstore owner said is actually a really good book, so that did raise my expectations. So we'll see how this one goes. But it is Günter Grass, The Tin Drum. Unfortunately, now you know I like to go into books not knowing anything about it, but when I showed this to the bookstore owner that I was getting it, he said something like this is a story about a kid, I think, who for whatever reason he doesn't like the world, so he decides to stop growing. And that's all I know about it. So I may be getting part of it wrong, but that's basically the essence of what he said the book was about. So while that may have raised expectations for the book, it does say here, winner of the Nobel Prize. Now, the Nobel Prize is not the same thing as the Pulitzer. I am notoriously not a fan of the Pulitzer. I hate every single book I've read that's won a Pulitzer. So I don't know about the Nobel Prize. We'll try it out. Another top 1000 book is Leo Tolstoy, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. So in high school, I think I read part of War and Peace. Well, I know I read part of it. I think I read somewhere around 200 pages. And I'm really torn about whether I should try rereading it or just resume reading it 100 or 200 pages in, because that is a book on the top 1000 list, but I don't really remember much of anything about it, so I can't say if the writing was any good or not. So I don't know, I'm really torn on if I want to try giving War and Peace a read or a reread at some point. But The Death of Ivan Ilyich is on the top 1000 list. It also says and other stories, which I probably will give a try. The thing for me with Russian writers is for a long time I have actually compared my own writing to Russian writers. They tend to be ridiculously long with a lot of characters, and in the end everyone dies, especially the main character, rendering the whole plot useless because you're trying to accomplish whatever, if it's falling in love or gaining wealth or whatever, finding freedom or whatever, and in the end the person dies anyway. So what was the whole point? That's kind of how a lot of Russian writers write. A lot of words, a lot of characters, and in the end everyone dies. My books are kind of the same way, so I've thought, at heart I am something of a Russian writer myself. So given the title, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, naturally this is a book where the main character evidently dies. So Russian writers, I just kind of like that, and I relate with that. Next off the top 1000 list is The Warden by Anthony Trollope. So I don't know anything about this book, but giving it a try. Next are two books by Rohinton Mysteries. So there's Such a Long Journey and Family Matters. Neither of these are signed. The main thing with Rohinton Mystery is I'm currently reading a book by him, A Fine Balance, and of every author I've ever read, there are two authors who really stand out to me for matching my own writing style. They would be Richard Wright, the author of Native Son, and Rohinton Mystery. We just write very similarly. We have the same vocabulary, our sentence structure is the same way, our use of description and dialogue is the same way. We just write very similarly to each other, like clones of each other. So for that reason, I am interested in reading everything by Rohinton Mystery. I think he's only published 4 books. I think Such a Long Journey may have been Rohinton Mystery's first novel. I don't know. I do know he wrote something before that, a few years before, so I'm hoping that was maybe a short story and this was his first novel. I don't know. But anyway, I kind of want to read everything by Rohinton Mystery, so I saw these at the bookstore and I got them. Last, what would a book haul be without some signed books? So first off, we have A Ring of Endless Light by Madeleine L'Engle. So she is the author of A Wrinkle in Time. So I tried reading that book. I probably only read 3 pages. I forget what I didn't like about it, but something about it I was just nope, not for me. I hate this. But I saw this in the back of the bookstore and I was like, oh, Madeleine L'Engle, that's awesome. And the reason I think I was able to get this was because it was misspelled online, the title. Instead of Endless Light, it was Ingless Light. So for that reason, like if you typed in, you know, the title of that book, like to buy it online, it would not have showed up just because of the way like the algorithm works or whatever. So for that reason, if you tried to like look up, you know, signed books by Madeleine L'Engle, this one would not have popped up online because of the misspelling. So that was kind of to my benefit. For that reason, it didn't sell, so it was available to me when I saw it at the bookstore. So I'm really excited about that, even though I didn't like A Wrinkle in Time at all, and I'm not sure if I'll read this or anything else by her. I mean, she's a really popular children's author, I think, especially for A Wrinkle in Time. It's a real well-liked book. So I'm a sucker for signed books, so I'm glad I got it. Last on the book haul, another signed book. The most recent book I've gotten is John Irving. What's it called? Last Night in Twisted River. So when I saw this and the signed sticker, I was like, John Irving, the author of World According to Garp? I was very conflicted about that book because that first chapter of that book I thought was awesome. It was one of the best first chapters I've ever read. But nothing about the book really was able to sustain that good first chapter. From then on, it was all just kind of downhill and it just didn't really work for me. So I just liked the book less and less. It never lived up to its potential. But I've always remembered the first chapter of that book. It was just great. So anyway, real glad to have it. Okay, now for the book reviews, and I'm going to kind of fly through these. First is Paul Therouk's The Kingdom by the Sea. So Paul Therouk's is on the top 1000 list for The Great Railway Bazaar, which I have a copy of, but I wanted to start with this book just to kind of get an introduction to the author. And this is a signed book, so I mean a signed copy. So I thought because of that, I would want to like this book more since it's signed. So I gave it a try, and at first I really liked it. Like the first chapter made me think, hey, this could actually be like a 5-star book. And I liked the next few chapters, but just as the chapters went along, I was less and less interested in it. So basically what this book is about is it's just, he's going all around England, like the entire coast, and that's it. It's just like a travel book, going through all the cities all along the coast of the United Kingdom, or whatever, the British island. I don't know if he goes to Ireland. Yes, it looks like he goes to Northern Ireland. Yes, it looks like he went to Northern Ireland. Why do I? Yes, it looks like he went to Northern Ireland and went all around Northern Ireland, but not the rest of the island. But anyway, so the problem I think with this book is it just didn't work for me like as a novel length book, because I just wasn't really interested in it as it went on. But I think it would be good if it was like in like 3,000 word chunks, like 3,000 word chapters, and that was it. For instance, I think this book would be best as like magazine articles. In a magazine, I think it'd be great. So whatever, if you just have like a magazine about travel in England, just to have pretty much any one of these chapters, and it'd be great. It'd be a great little read. But do I want to read, 300, 350 pages of basically the same thing? They're all the same way. He wakes up, he may have breakfast, he goes to the bus station or the train station or whatever, and he rides the train or the bus and gets to the next town and has dinner and goes to bed. And then the next day, the next chapter, same thing. And nothing really happens along the way. I mean, he has conversations with people, but just nothing really is happening like to really push the story along. I don't really care or whatever about like the next town he gets to. I don't feel like, oh, what's the pressure of this book? What's the conflict of this book? For instance, with Journey Around the World in 80 Days or whatever by Jules Verne, there's a time constraint to it. He has to reach the destination by a certain point. With this book, there's really no imperative to it. So I mean, if there's any obstacles along the way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's delayed a day or a week or whatever. So what's the conflict really? What's the point? What do I need to know about the next chapter? Why should I want to read the next chapter? That was kind of the failing of this book. So if it was just in magazine articles, 3,000 words or whatever, you know, 4 or 5 pages, whatever, it'd be great. It'd be a great little read. I like his writing. As a whole novel, 350 pages, I just got tired of it. So in the end, I DNF'd it after around 100, 150 pages or so. Next is The Undertaking by Thomas Lynch. This is a top 1000 book and it is signed. This book is about an undertaker and it's about undertaking. So that's it. It's about dead bodies and stuff. And so I'm really conflicted about this book because, I mean, parts of it, I liked it. Parts of the writing were good and parts of the humor I liked, but I thought it was also real tedious in other ways. Like he would just repeat certain things, and in a way it's like he's trying to be funny, like, oh, this is kind of a little witty line, I'll use that line again and again and again. And it's just like he's trying to be funny, he's trying too hard, and he's always like trying to be humorous in a way. And I don't know, it just didn't really work for me. It just got tiresome. And then about a third of the way into the book, it started getting really religious, like just talking about God and religion and all this stuff. And that just kind of pushed me away. I was like, nope, I don't really want to read that. So in the end, that just kind of killed the book for me. I was already kind of getting tired of it just because of the kind of like relentless attempts at humor. So I'm really torn on this book. I mean, there are parts of it I liked, parts of it that have potential, and it is a really unique read, a book about undertaking. So dead people, a book about dealing with dead bodies and stuff. And so anyway, because of all that, it's definitely an interesting read. It's a worthwhile read. Maybe it's something you'll really like. So for that reason, I probably would recommend it just because it's so unique and parts of it are definitely have potential, but as a whole it just didn't really work for me. I kind of got tired of it, especially because of the religion stuff, but I'd still recommend it. So anyway, yeah. Next is Dirk Kussler, The Devil's Sea. So this is Dirk Kussler's first book written like solely by himself after the death of his father, Clive Cussler, who is a real big influence for me. These two have been co-writing the Dirk Pitt books for quite a while. I don't know how many they've done. I want to say like around 5 or so. And for the most part, I have really like reached a point where I was tired of reading Cussler. All of the co-written books like with Cussler, they just weren't very good. They were very formulaic and I just didn't really like it. It's just like insert chase scene here, insert another chase scene here, insert another chase scene here. And I don't know, they're just tiresome, formulaic. And also I think with co-written books, the like headline author probably, in my opinion, probably doesn't do much. They probably just sign their name to it. The lesser known author does all of the work. The big name author puts their name on it and it sells 1 million copies or whatever. So I just don't really like that. To me, that's just not good. It's luring readers in like because they like the big name author, but it's not a book by them. It's a book by this lesser known author, and it's a lesser quality than what you're expecting from the big name author. So I just didn't really like co-written books. So I kind of swore off reading all co-written books with Cussler. But since he died, this is the first book solely by Dirk Kussler. So I wanted to give it a try. And it's a Dirk Pitt book. The Dirk Pitt books was like my big thing when I was young. It's really what got me into reading. And it inspired my Trevor Knight series. So with this book, I could judge it solely on Dirk Kussler's merits. Not what I expect of Clive Cussler, but judging solely Dirk Kussler's writing. And as I started to read, I definitely noticed red flags. One of them was, I think in the second chapter, there was 2 uses of "as you know" in dialogue, like within 2 paragraphs of each other. As you know, blah, 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 another paragraph, then a paragraph later, as you know, blah, blah, blah. you just never say really as you know in dialogue, and especially in like novels or any kind of like writing medium. As you know is just a terrible expression, because why would characters say as you know if people know that? For instance, just imagine like something saying like, Margaret, as you know, is our mother. Why would anyone say that? They would just say mom, you know? So generally, anytime you see as you know in writing, it is probably the mark of an inexperienced writer just trying to give exposition. As you know, so-and-so is our mother. As you know, we live on Earth. It's just, why would anyone say that? It's just the author trying to explain things to readers, but the other character would already know that, so the person would not say that. So it just drives me crazy. I just hate the expression, as you know. And Dirk Kussler used it twice in 3 paragraphs. So right there, that was like, uh-oh, red flag, big time. There were several other red flags as well. I don't really remember them at this point. You know, in a way, I've kind of like tried to block this book from my memory. But the last one I read was a line, she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. So I just do not remember Kussler like having those kind of lines in his books. And I know I said I wouldn't like compare it to Clive Kussler, but still, with all of these expressions, as you know, and she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding, it's just amateurish. So where is the editor for this book? Why didn't the editor say, hey, you should get rid of that line, that's not a good line? No, they kept it in. So that either tells me the editors of this book just don't really know good writing themselves. They're just going to do whatever Dirk Kussler writes, whatever he sends them, they're just going to print it off, send it to the publishers, put Clive Kussler's name on it in big font, and publish it. So that tells me the writing is crap, and it's going to stay crap. I'm not going to read Dirk Kussler's book thinking, well, maybe he'll get better as a writer. These expressions, as you know, and she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding, that tells me he's just going to publish crap and just sell it because of the Kussler name, and it's going to be terrible writing quality. So this book pretty much permanently kills Dirk Kussler's writing for me. I'm just really not interested in it. So if you want to continue the Dirk Pit series, I would say bring in another writer. I'm sorry for that. I read this book, I bought this book largely just to kind of support the family because Clive Kussler meant so much to me. So I wanted to support the family, even though, you know, they definitely have millions of dollars. I wanted to give Dirk Kussler a chance, but nope, this book killed it for me. Do not say, as you know, and do not have that expression, she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. It's just terrible. It's way overdone. Don't do it. So amateurish, bad, terrible writing quality. So no, I'm not doing it. Finally, the last thing, this book, like the prologue or whatever, like the first chapter it gets into with like the president or whatever, it's about the Chinese, and the Chinese are developing these missiles and whatever. I am just really tired of like every single like action adventure thriller book or whatever having either China or Russia as the villains. I would actually like to write an action adventure series or whatever from either the Chinese or especially the Russians' perspectives, and have like the main character be like in the like Russian intelligence or Russian military, and their job is to stop like evil American plots, like just the CIA trying to like destroy the world, or the Department of Defense trying to start World War III, or whatever, the American president like doing some kind of like human rights violation, or just like launching an unjustified war or whatever. Why is Russia and China always the main villains when, in my opinion, like the US is the one who's responsible for all these wars, getting involved in all these wars? It should be trying to stop the Americans from destroying the world, because so often it seems like they're the ones doing it. So I'm just kind of tired of Russia and China always being the bad guy. So I think it'd be funny to have a book from their perspective trying to stop Americans from destroying the world. I don't know. I'd like to do that at some point. We'll see if I ever do. Last of the book reviews is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. So this is amazingly not on the top 1000 list. The top 1000 book by Roald Dahl is Matilda, which I read and I liked pretty much. I am like a big fan of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I've been binge watching the Gene Wilder movie like over and over again, like every night for the past like 2 months. I just really like that movie. I don't know, there's just something timeless about it. Now, I'm really torn here what to say because I'd be tempted to like go through everything in this book and say like what is in the Gene Wilder movie and what is in like the Tim Burton, what's his name? Johnny Depp movie. What are the differences? And just do a detailed comparison. So for instance, go through the Gene Wilder movie and just show which lines from that film are verbatim from this book, and go through the Johnny Depp movie and which lines in that film are verbatim from the book. And I'd like to do that, but one big concern is like copyright, so I don't really want to like get a copyright strike or whatever. And another thing is, I think you should probably read the book anyway. I think that is like the whole point of the book. So whether you've seen the movies or not, read the book and compare for yourself. So I don't really want to do that. I don't want to say like, oh, this line from the movie is straight from the book. This line is different. You know, I don't want to really tell all that. I think you should read the book yourself and see the movies yourself and enjoy that experience for yourself. What I will say is I definitely thought the Johnny Depp film was more, how do I say? There were definitely more lines from the book that were in the Johnny Depp film. The Gene Wilder one kind of changed some more of them. So in a way, the Johnny Depp film was more of a faithful adaptation, I think. But with a big caveat that the whole backstory about Willy Wonka, like his father and all that, and not being able to have chocolate and all that, and his just daddy issues and all that, all those things from the Tim Burton film were added for that film. So I don't want to say I didn't like that, but that's just a change that's definitely not in the book. So it kind of bothers me that for otherwise, that film is a more faithful adaptation of the book, but because of those added story elements, it's really not. So with the Gene Wilder movie, it does not have that. It doesn't have that added element. Even though a lot of the lines are written a little bit different, in a way, since it doesn't have that massive addition or that massive change, is that a more faithful adaptation? I don't know. So in the end, I think they're both definitely worth watching and compare them with a book. So I think that's great. So read the book and see like, oh, that's like directly in the Gene Wilder film. That's directly in the Johnny Depp film. And look at the changes and like, oh, they tweaked this line and whatever. And anyway, I'm just talking too much about it. Anyway, the long and short of it is I do definitely recommend the book and compare it with the movie yourself. But since I did mention binge watching the Gene Wilder movie, I'll still say I definitely am more partial to that movie. It's just more magical to me, and I really like, of course, Gene Wilder's performance as Willy Wonka. It's just iconic. And when I watched the Johnny Depp film, it feels more like just watching like a Michael Jackson retelling, like Michael Jackson cast as Willy Wonka. And it just doesn't feel right, and it feels kind of creepy in a way, and he's just unlikable, and there's the whole added storyline about his father and all that. So I definitely more like the Gene Wilder film. The other thing I don't really like about the more recent film, the Johnny Depp film, is the CGI characters of the Oompa Loompas, because it's like all the same actor and it's all just obviously CGI. Whereas the Gene Wilder film, they actually have, you know, actors, and so they're actually like real people in that regard. Whereas when you're watching the Johnny Depp film, the Tim Burton film, you know it's not real. So I just didn't really like that too much. And I don't really know why they did that so much, because I mean, why just make them all clones of each other, really? People are not clones of each other, so I don't know, just to have that uniqueness in them. I don't know, I just like it a lot more in the Gene Wilder film for that reason. It's just real in a way. They're real people. In the Tim Burton film, they're not. Hey y'all, it's me. So one thing I wanted to add about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is the whole plot about Slugworth from the Gene Wilder movie is not in the book. So Slugworth is not really a character, an antagonist in the book. And in the book, this is kind of a spoiler, but at the end, after Mike PV or TV or whatever his name is, I should know, I watched the movie so much. Ow, that's loud. After Mike loses and only Charlie is left, instead of like testing Charlie, Willy Wonka basically just says, "Oh, you win. And you win because I like you the most." So I like in the film that there is the Slugworth character. Oh, he gave me a kiss. And that Willy Wonka tests Charlie in the end. He doesn't just say, "Oh, you're the last one. You win automatically." I like that there's the test for Charlie, so that there's the character challenge for him, that it shows that he earns the Chocolate Factory, not that he's just the last one left, because all the other kids have some kind of a test that tempts them with, you know, the food or the bubble gum or whatever. There's something tailored to them to make them fail. So it would be unfair if Charlie does not have some similar test that he must overcome. So in a way, in the book, it's not really a fair competition. Willy Wonka pretty much decided that he would give it to Charlie anyway because he liked him the most. He doesn't tempt him, he doesn't try to make him lose or whatever, he doesn't challenge him. He's just the last one left, so he wins. So I like that in the Gene Wilder movie that Slugworth is there as an antagonist and Charlie has to overcome his own challenge that proves he is the better heir for this factory than the other kids. So I do like that addition in the Gene Wilder film, even though it's not in the book. Okay, now for the books I am currently reading. I'm just going to kind of fly through these. I am really kind of not happy with this because I've been reading a lot of the same books for months and months, and I'm not really making good progress on them, mainly because I've been focused more on like writing. So I've just been making real slow progress on these books, and I want to read something else, but I don't really want to DNF these either. But the books are George R.R. Martin, Storm of Swords. So I am around somewhere between a quarter and a third into it. I was not liking it because of the overuse of italics, but I'm kind of getting past that a little bit. So I don't know. I'll probably end up giving this 4 stars, but yeah. Next is Neil Stephenson, Snow Crash. So I am about 24%, 25% into the book. I'm liking it pretty well, I guess. The main problem, I guess, is this book is, I think it's called maximalist. So a lot of times I say I am a minimalist. I do not like very much description in novels and just have the bare bones of the plot and the characters and whatever. But this is the opposite. This is maximalist. So this like describes everything about everything, and anytime it can like go into something else and explain something else, it does. So I don't really like that kind of style myself. So I'm really torn on about this book. I mean, I like some of the humor, I like some of the writing, but it also feels like it's just way overdone, like it could be cut down, it could be trimmed down. So I don't know, I kind of would like to finish this book. In a way, I wish I could be done with it, but I don't really quite want to DNF it at this point. I'm hoping at some point like the book gets better and captures my interest more. But it's definitely, I'm kind of on the edge. I'd kind of just like to be done with it. Not because it's bad or anything. It's just, it's taking too long for me to get through with it. And at this point, I'm not sure if my opinion on the book will really change. So am I just gonna like slowly suffer through like 300 more pages just to come out thinking the exact thing I'm thinking right now about the book. I don't know. So I'm just kind of wanting to be done with it. I don't know, at some point I may just finally decide, I'll just look up the summary of the book online and just see what else happens. I'll probably wind up doing that at some point if the book doesn't capture my interest before then. Next is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, a signed book by John Barondette. I am about 25% into this one. I really did not think I might like this book because I think this is actually about like a murder case in Savannah. Part of why I'm actually interested in the book is because one of my books is set in Savannah. So I was kind of interested in it for that reason. Now, I'm actually kind of liking the writing style a bit, especially the last chapter I read, I think last night. I really liked the chapter. It was about this guy who was like at a pharmacy, I guess. It's kind of like a restaurant, I think. I may be confusing it with another book, but anyway, this guy is like at this restaurant and he's eating and he's kind of like a mad scientist in a way. He's like a mad inventor. And anyway, it's just that chapter. I really like that chapter. It's really perfectly written in a way. So I don't know about this book. I mean, there's definitely parts of it I really like, but at the same time, I kind of want to get done with it. I've been reading it on and off for several months now, and I'm only like 25% through with it. So I don't know. I may just kind of read it up until it gets to like the murder or the trial stuff and see if I'm liking that at all. If that turns me off to the book, I may DNF it there. But I'm thinking I'll try to stick around till at least then, because I mean, that's kind of like the main thing about the book is this murder case or this trial or whatever. So I think I'll try to stick it out to at least then and see if I'm still interested in the book by then. Bird. Next is the collected stories of Carson McCullers. I really like Carson McCullers in a way. Her book, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, it just did something to me. It left a mark on me, and I've never been able to get past it. It just did something to my soul. So I want to read really everything by her. So collection of short stories. I'm actually currently doing a booktube video on this book. So as I read each story, I give my views on each book and rank them, which ones are my favorite and least favorite. So anyway, I just read 2 stories today. I'm liking them well enough. They're pretty short. I'm not much of a fan of short stories, but I really want to read everything by Carson McCullers in a way. So I'm liking it well enough. Next is Affliction by Russell Banks. So last year I read his book, The Sweet Hereafter, and I really like that book. It's one of the most perfectly written books I've ever read. It's just a beautiful book. So I became a Russell Banks completionist because of that. So this is a signed book, and so I was really interested in reading it. Now, this is difficult to say because at first reading this book, I'm about 2 chapters in. No, maybe just 1 chapter. The biggest problem with it is the character, the protagonist, is just kind of a little bit more of an intellectual. So it's kind of more difficult to read because he uses some longer words and stuff, more elaborate words, a more elaborate writing style. Whereas The Sweet Hereafter was just a really easy read. So it's just perfectly written. It's just a real good read. This one, it's more difficult to read, more difficult to get through. So the writing from that standpoint, it's definitely not working the same way with me. Reading the first chapter of The Sweet Hereafter, I knew right away, oh my God, this could be a great book. Reading the first chapter of this book, it didn't really do the same thing to me. So I'm trying to tell myself that Russell Banks is a great writer. I know this. And just to have faith in him and just to like trust that it'll get better, trust that I'll get into it. But definitely reading the first chapter, I'm kind of thinking, this is more difficult to get into because of the writing. So I don't know, it's just not quite up to par as The Sweet Hereafter yet, but I'm definitely not near giving up on it. I've only read the first chapter, so we'll see how it goes. Next on the currently reading is The Labyrinth of Dreaming Books, and I'm somewhere around Bird. 30, maybe 40 pages into this book. So I've been really reluctant about reading this book because it's the sequel of The City of Dreaming Books, which I think is the best book ever written. So how do you write a sequel to the best book ever? How could it not be a disappointment? So reading it, there's definitely parts where I'm thinking this could definitely be good and where Walter Moore's is at his best. For instance, I'll just give an example, is the main character, he's this dinosaur who is like, at this point, he is a really well-regarded author. And so what happens is he comes upon this like manuscript or something and he reads it and he just thinks, this isn't very good. And that's a contrast of The City of Dreaming Books, where the character Optimus Yarnspinner comes across this manuscript and it's the most perfectly thing ever written. In this book, he comes across a manuscript and it's not very good. And so he's reading it and kind of like trying to think about like, who is the author of this manuscript, just like in The City of Dreaming Books. And he's reading the manuscript and reading the manuscript, and then he realized, wait a minute, I wrote this. So I just thought that was hilarious. So I like that. So anyway, the book definitely has potential. I am really making slow progress on it. I have probably not read anything from this book in like 2 months almost. I don't know why, even though I'm liking it, I just take long breaks from it. I've kind of done that with Walter Moore's before. But also I'm just not much in the reading mood. So anyway, I do definitely want to get back into it, and I want to finish it by the end of the year. Next on the currently reading list, about 20% in, is If I Die in a Combat Zone by Tim O'Brien. So if you've seen my channel before, you know I'm a big Tim O'Brien fan. He's currently my favorite writer, and his book, The Things They Carried, I just absolutely loved. I buy every single Tim O'Brien book I can find, especially any signed books by him. I have, I think, 3. I have In the Lake of the Woods, July, July, Tomcat in Love, and Going After Cassiato. 4 signed books by him. This is his first memoirs. This is the first book he actually published, I think, or was... Northern Lights, his first book. No, Northern Lights was his first novel. This was his memoirs. So this was the first book he ever published. So because of that, it's a good place to start out on. I'm really torn on this because I'm not much of a fan of memoirs, but it's Tim O'Brien, and I love Tim O'Brien, and it's about the Vietnam War. So I like all that. But am I really liking it? Have I read any chapter yet that I think is really great? Not really. So at this point, I'm still thinking that The Things They Carried and In the Lake of the Woods are his best books, 5-star books. This one, I think I see that he is still a young writer. He's still learning his craft. So there's definitely parts where it's like vintage Tim O'Brien in a way, where he's at the top of his game. But for the most part, I think he's still learning to be a writer at this point. So I wouldn't think this is really one of his best books yet, so I don't know. I'll still probably wind up giving it around 3 stars, maybe 4 stars depending on how the rest of the book goes. Potentially 5 stars if it starts blowing me away, but presently I'm probably leaning toward 3-star rating. But again, I'm only like 25, 30, 40 pages in. Last, already mentioned in this video, is Rohingya Mystery, A Fine Balance. So this one I am, somewhere around 35% into it. So I don't know, about 250 pages out of like 750. So what do I say about it? Obviously, since I've bought other books by him, I want to read everything by him because our writing styles are so similar. But part of the problem right now is this is a really long book, and that's just kind of tiresome. And I'm just still kind of waiting for something to happen. It's definitely a character-driven book where it's not so much that I think it's really building to something. It's just talking about characters and going into their lives and going into their backstory, and they meet up with other characters, and you go into those characters' lives, and you go into those characters' backstories, and you get to know them. But what is it all really building to? What is like the conflict? What is the climax of this book? What are they trying to achieve or whatever? What is it building toward? That I find it's lacking. And because of that, it's kind of like, why do I really want to read 500 more pages of this? What am I reading it for? What is happening? What is going to happen? Why should I really care? I mean, I like the characters well enough. There's no problem with that, but I'm just kind of wondering, like, what is this leading to, you know? And that's not really good. I mean, just imagine sitting in a movie theater for an hour and a half and still thinking, what is this movie even about? What's going to happen? I mean, what is this leading to? That's not really good. So even though the writing is good, I like it, especially maybe because it's so much like my own. And some of the characterization and storytelling is really good. Like, from a small standpoint, like a small picture, it all works good. It's all well written. But big picture, 250 pages in, am I really like on the edge of my seat with this book? No. I would like to finish it. I don't want to give it up. But at the same time, I'm just kind of like, is something going to happen, or is it just more of the same all the way through and nothing major really happens? I don't know. So I kind of wish something would happen, or trim the book down. Get to whatever is going to happen sooner, because I'm kind of losing patience with this book. So that's where I currently stand. So I don't know, at some point just I may start reading less and less of the book just as I lose interest in it, and eventually just decide, I'm done with it. But I still want to read the whole book, so I'm just hoping something happens to speed the book along, get something going, have some kind of a conflict, have some kind of a lead to something. So yeah, that's it. Oh, I should show this off. So Mom got this for me. So, make milk, not war. I'm not just a piece of meat. Green grass for all. So if you don't know, I don't think I've mentioned it on my channel. I don't know. I went vegetarian last year, June 22nd of last year. So I think I've gone 13 months now. So I don't know. Mom knows I'm vegetarian, so she saw this probably at Walmart or something. I don't know where. So she just thought of me, so she got it. So I don't know. I like it. So I am vegetarian, not vegan. I do have animal products, namely milk, even though mostly I just drink almond milk, and mainly for health reasons. I used to drink whole milk, but I think that's kind of fatty. So I switched to almond milk several years ago. And I also do have eggs, but I definitely do try to get eggs that have like vegetarian fed chickens. So that's one of my things. But if I go out to a restaurant or whatever, I'll just eat any eggs and just hope they're like vegetarian fed or whatever. So I do have animal products, but not products that require the slaughter of animals. So with milk, you don't have to kill a cow to get milk. The cow's going to produce milk anyway, and maybe they'll produce more milk than you need for the calf or whatever, so you don't need to kill the calf either. With chickens are going to lay eggs anyway, so you don't need to kill a chicken to get eggs. I did that just because I've long kind of felt that every life should have the potential to have a full life. Every animal should have the potential at a full life. So I just wanted to be more consistent with that. And if I could avoid eating animals, which I readily could, it's just a matter of like willpower and all that. Why not? Because I believe animals, generally, they should try to give them a full life. So if you can have something else for dinner or breakfast or lunch or whatever, why not? I mean, I know meat is tasty and all that, but there are alternatives. So that's why I went vegetarian. Just for myself personally, so I'm not like, dogmatic about it. I don't go around telling people like, you're killing animals or whatever. I don't like that. I don't think that's a way to win people over to an argument. I think the best way is just to show them like, by your own life, by your own example, and whatever. I think that's a far better way to do it, and to deal civilly with people, not to mock people or to attack people. So anyway, I just made that choice for myself. I know I'm not going to control other people, what other people do. I don't want to control what other people do. but all I can be responsible for is my own choices. So I try to be more consistent with giving every life a chance as much as I can. Okay, last of all is the writing update. So in a couple previous videos, I did an editing explain video, 2 videos, for Autumn and Destiny, where I'm going through the book talking about, ooh, there was a good page there, the edits I'm making to the book. This is the 4th draft of Autumn and Destiny, the 4th Trevor Knight book, and it's going pretty well. I am on the 4th and final act, but what happened was 2 weeks ago, and this is pretty sad, but I lost one of my birds. Storm started having some seizures. She previously was having some like digestive problems, but a couple weeks ago she started having seizures, and after fighting for a few hours, I actually had to make the decision to put her down because she just kept having seizures occasionally, and I held her for a few hours just kind of hoping she would pass on her own, but she wasn't, and she was like, you know, her heartbeat was still going good and everything. So I just didn't know how long she could last like that. I mean, she was completely immobile, really. I mean, she was just in my hand for a few hours. I mean, she couldn't stand or anything. So, I mean, obviously she was at the end of her life, just whatever medical issues she was having. So I hoped she would pass on her own, but after like, I don't know, 3 hours or so of going through seizures and just holding her, hoping she would pass on her own, I had to put her down. So that was real sad to me, and I'm gonna start crying. So anyway, I was on Act 4 of this book, and since Storm died, oh man, I'm starting to cry. Act 4 of this book is really sad because, I mean, mentioning how my books are like Russian riders, everyone dies at the end. No difference here. There is several deaths at the end, and several main characters die, which just kind of rips your heart out. So I didn't really want to work on this book anymore after Storm died, because I just didn't want to cry anymore. So what I did instead is I started working on Arabian Dawn, which is the 5th book in the Trevor Knight series. I'd previously written the first draft, I think last year, but I decided to start on the 2nd draft of that book, and right now I am on Act 2 of Arabian Dawn, of the 2nd draft. So that is all going very well. I have kind of hit a bit of a speed bump, I guess, because what happens in the book at this point is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood goes to the Emir of Oman and like tries to get him to agree to assassinate a Saudi prince. So what they do is they go to Iran to have this Iranian team of assassins take out this Saudi prince. But what I thought happened was it just happened too easily. This Oman, or no, it's not Oman, it's Qatar. This Qatar Emir, he just agreed to have the Iranians assassinate this prince too easily. Like, what real reason does Qatar have to take out this prince? I did not really establish that too much. It's clear in the book that Qatar has good relations with the Muslim Brotherhood, who the Saudi prince is currently quarreling with. So the Muslim Brotherhood has reasons to remove this prince. But even though this Qatar Emir is close with the Muslim Brotherhood, I didn't feel there was enough reasons for him to go to Iran to have them assassinate the prince, because it'd just be way too politically dangerous to do that. And furthermore, I don't quite have reasons yet why Iran would really want to kill the prince. There is actually going to be some reasons very soon, because the prince is going to launch a war against Yemen, which is based on real life, the Saudi intervention in Yemen. And real bad thing, because Yemen was already in a civil war, and there was a lot of like famine and stuff, and like hunger, and you know, potentially tens or even hundreds of thousands of people starving to death. Real bad situation as it was. But then Saudi Arabia chose to basically start a war with Yemen, and the United Kingdom and the US actually helped participate in it. And so what they're doing is all these countries are like blockading Yemen and all this stuff. And this is based on real events. And there's already a real great humanitarian problem in Yemen because it's just war-torn and there's drought and starvation and just hundreds of thousands of people could die. And instead of actually helping, the US is like, you know, assisting with military operations, bombing Yemen. So just making things worse. So anyway, the prince is getting involved in that. And basically that is where Iran, you know, they're kind of supporting the other side in Yemen. So that's where Iran would have some reasons to take out the prince. But anyway, basically I'm having problems in the act, just trying to get everything in the right order and to have the character motivations all make sense and to have all the characters introduced well. Because basically in the first draft it just happens too easily. Like, I need to get to the next plot point, so here's this scene where it bridges the gap, where it sets the next, you know, major sequence into motion. It just happened way too easily without real explanation of why. So I want to develop better reasons for that, and if I do that, I may have to switch some things around. So like the war in Yemen, I may have to like introduce that differently. The war may have to play out a little bit differently. How Iran gets involved may be a little bit different. What happens with Muslim Brotherhood and with Qatar may be different, because also that's going to lead into another act of the book. I think in Act 4 or maybe Act 3, I don't know, where Saudi Arabia gets close to having a war with Qatar. And anyway, so I'm kind of trying to set all this stuff up, but struggling with knowing what to introduce, when, who to introduce, what their motives are, how to organize all that. So that's currently what I'm struggling with. So anyway, I am making good progress on Arabian Dawn. I am on the second draft of the book, and so I think I'll return to editing Ottoman Destiny sometime in the not too distant future, maybe a few days, I don't know. Because I'm only, I don't know, 100 pages, probably 150 pages left. So it should be pretty easy. So I'll finish editing the book, make the changes into the computer. That'll take, I don't know, a few weeks. And then I could order another copy of this book, which would be the 5th draft, and begin the 5th draft edits. But anyway, that will do it. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in another video. Bye.